Sanibonani and welcome. I'm so excited to go on this journey with you, learning to speak isiZulu and learning about the history of this phenomenal nation. Now, I'm going to be really blitzing through quite a bit of history today, just so we can, as they say, set the scene, get all the players on the stage. And we're going to start with the earliest inhabitants of Southern Africa, which are the Khoi and the San. There's a bit of debate about, their terminology, about who these people are exactly. We are just going to blitz through all of that, not really discuss it a lot. The one sort of general, very broad distinction you can say is that the San are pure hunter-gatherers. They're moving around with the seasons, finding food, 100% nomadic, and then the Khoi are also hunting and gathering, but they are keeping some level of livestock, so like semi-pastoralists. But the important part that we are going to discuss is that these guys are speaking a variety of click languages. I don't really know much about these languages. I can't comment on them a lot. We can get into this at a later stage. But for now, all we really need to think about for our purposes is that we've got the earliest inhabitants being somewhere between hunter-gatherer and pastoralists, and speaking a variety of click languages. And it's thought that actually this way of life was kind of just the way of life for most of human history, from 200,000 years ago to about 10,000 years ago when agriculture starts to develop. And it's on that topic that we can introduce the Bantu. Around 5,000 years ago, somewhere here in East Central Africa, we have a completely new way of life developing. And there's a few changes here. One is that we start keeping cattle. That's a cow, just trust me. Where these cattle come from, super interesting story, but we're not going to get into that at the moment. But we start keeping cattle. We also start growing crops. That's crops of some variety. Another technological advance is ceramic. Ceramics had been around before this, but they really become part of the everyday life in the sort of development of the Bantu culture. And we also have metallurgy. Not all of these happened at the same time. That's a spear, by the way. But this is not really important when each of these develops. It was very difficult to tell because no one was really documenting. Today I made a pot. And the archaeology of this region is not very, very well done or very well researched. So the main thing is that we've got now a completely new way of life, completely new culture developing. And this culture kind of expands or migrates. It's difficult to really have a good terminology for it because these guys are also, in a way, semi-nomadic. They are moving around with their herds of cattle. So they're finding good pasture. And in this way, they're not really staying in one place. They're not being 100% sedentary, but they're also not 100% nomadic. So the term migration, it's a little bit of a fast and loose term, but that's neither here nor there. The whole point is that they are expanding or moving into the rest of Southern Africa. And we can track through DNA, through the ceramics, and through language, we can say they call them migration waves, even though this wasn't like you can contrast it, let's say, with the fur trackers. There was like a group of people who said, okay, we are going from point A to point B, let's go. This wasn't really like that. It's kind of a multi-generational expansion moving with the herds of cattle. So anyway, the first migration wave comes more or less down the center of Southern Africa. This is the Sotho-Tswana. Let's put that here, the Sotho-Tswana. The Sotho-Tswana migration wave. And you can see there we have Botswana and Lesotho. So this is where these guys come from one of the earliest migration waves. Now, an interesting topic that we will just blitz through is that Europeans had been trying to sail around the south coast for quite some time. They were trying to get to India to access the trade over there without going across the Silk Road. And so we do have interactions between Europeans and Africans along this west coast. The documentation is not excellent, and it's not 1,000% sure who actually were they interacting with. Was it the Khoi and the San, or was it groups of Bantu that had migrated south? And the confusion comes in that in how the Africans are described, because sometimes they'll be described as a very I don't want to say organized, because San people are not disorganized, but a more hierarchical society. They have kings, they have crops, etc. But they describe them as the Khoi. And it's like I said, it's not sure. Were they actually meeting Bantus who had come down, or option B? It is thought by some people that the Khoi and the San actually were a much more hierarchical society at some point, and that through this migration wave of the Sotho-Tswana moving in here, the San actually got pushed into the desert and became hunter-gatherers. So what Jan van Riebeck finds when he sets up here in Cape Town, when he starts interacting with the Khoi and the San, he's not interacting with people whose way of life has been the same for 200,000 years. He is actually interacting with, in a way, refugees, people who have become hunter-gatherers because their society collapsed through this conflict with the Sotho-Tswana, through being pushed into less desirable regions, because obviously the Sotho-Tswana need to have the good grazing for their cattle. Super fascinating story. We're not going to get into it. The only thing that we're going to say about it at the moment is that this interaction between the Sotho-Tswana and the San wasn't as mutually exchangeative, let's just make that a word, as the Nguni wave, which we'll get to now, because the Sotho-Tswana wave has no cliques. That part of the culture did not migrate into the Sotho-Tswana culture. So blitzing forward, the Nguni language group comes down the east coast, really, Nguni. And this is where we find isiZulu, isiNdebele, isiSwati, and isiXhosa. So if you want to know in which language group a language falls, you're just going to look at this prefix. Isi, Sesotho and Setswana have Sesotho, Setswana, and we have Sepedi, which is either Sepedi, it's either Southern Tswana or Northern Sotho. But that's Sepedi, and they all have the Se prefix. All the Nguni languages have Isi as their prefix. And here, the Nguni migration wave, their interaction with the Khoi and the San is more mutually exchangeative. Love that word. And we see this in the fact that the cliques migrate into the Nguni language, which is why today these languages have click sounds. And the click sounds we're going to need to know for isiZulu, it's C, which is the dental click. It's X, which is the one with your cheek, and Q, which is the one with your palate. Can't do it as loud like a gunshot as some people. If you want to check out a phenomenal channel, it's called Zamani Zulu, and he gives this cute rap that you can practice like this. Until you get familiar with the clicks. And so these are the ones we'll need to know for isiZulu. Fortunately for us, isiZulu was first transcribed by English speakers. So when you read isiZulu, you read it more or less as you would read English. Whereas Sepedi and Setswana were not, and it's much harder as an English speaker to read these languages because they're not written as we would pronounce it. So yeah, other than these clicks, everything else in isiZulu you're going to read more or less as an English speaker would read that. Just very quickly, the third language group we have in South Africa is Chi, Shona, Venda, and Chichewa. So Chichewa here in Malawi, Shona here in Zimbabwe, and Venda in the north of South Africa, right there. And their prefix is all che, so that works out lovely, except that it's not actually on screen. That's where those guys come from. Then we also have Chi, Songa, and Chi Shangaan, which are two different cultures, one language. Songa. But of course, this is where we are focusing. These Ngunis, and specifically, of course, isiZulu. isiZulu. So, the reason I wanted to start with this whole long spiel is, many people have said to me that they struggle to, they want to learn one language, and then all of a sudden they realize, like myself, I live in Pretoria, which is mainly Tswana speaking, Tswana and Sepedi speaking. Now all of a sudden I'm speaking Zulu. So, they feel like it's a bit bewildering, all the different languages. We have 11 official languages. But what I think people fail to understand is that they are all related to Bantu. The original, it's not just like a theoretical language called urBantu, the original hypothetical original Bantu that has now morphed into all these languages over the centuries. And these languages are all going to be related and to varying extents mutually comprehensible. So just how mutually comprehensible are these languages? Let's look at this word actually, Bantu. Now, this word, even today has a bit of a bad rap. It's used in a kind of derogatory way, but it just means people. You'll find in isiZulu if you are speaking about someone. No, not two B's. If I'm speaking about people, I will talk about urBantu. If I'm speaking directly to people, I'll skip that first vowel and just say Bantu. So if you want to speak to me, you would say, Vito, do X, Y, and Z. If you were talking to your friend and you were discussing me, you were saying, Vito did this, you would say, ooh, Vito, ooh, Yenza, whatever, he did whatever. So that's where the word comes from the word people. And what you'll see in isiZulu and all the Bantu languages is that it consists of a root and a prefix. So how the language works is that we can take this root and in a way shift it around to different classes or put different prefixes in, here in the front to change the meaning a little bit. So we have urBantu, which is people. Then you have umuntu, which is person, singular, plural. You can also have isintu. So it doesn't translate so easily. It means in a way properly or correctly. People will use it if they are correcting your speech. They will say kuluma isintu, speak like a person in a way that's, if you want to directly translate it, but it means like correctly or properly. Speak isintu. And then, of course, we have the very famous Ubuntu, which is humanity. Not humanity as in all the people, humanity as in humaneness or humanness. So you see here we've got the exact same root, and we've just shifted around our prefix to give us the different terms. And let's look at some of the other languages. Let's look at Xhosa. Now, Xhosa also has Ntu. For people, they also have Abantu. So there we have an exact match, Abantu. For person, instead of Umu, they have Umtu. So if you weren't listening closely, you wouldn't even notice that these are different languages. let's go to Swati. Now, there, instead of Ntu, they have Ntfu. And they will have Bantu, Abantu, and Mundfu. Sorry, Mundfu, and also Umundfu. So, yeah, if you're speaking directly or if you're speaking about, you'll be killing that first vowel. So you see, very, very similar. Similar root and either identical or very similar prefix. So that's the Nguni group. And of course, within the language groups, they are more similar than between the language groups. But let's look at Tswana. Tswana. Instead of Ntu, they have To. They have Bato for people and Moto for person. And I'm sure by now you're picking up what I'm putting down. And if we go to Chivenda, which is in a way the most dissimilar of the Southern African languages or the South African languages, they have two spelled a little bit differently. And, they have Mutu for person. So this one, come on. Mutu, Umuntu, Umtu, come on, same thing. And then here, Chivenda is one of the difficult ones to pronounce. This V, it's like halfway between a V and a B. So if you pronounce it poorly, you would just say Batu, but it's actually like Vatu. So this is like VB. But you see there, ba, 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 that one. Also ubu. And they all work the same. They have the root, they have a prefix, and these roots very, very similar, as you can see. And the prefixes, very, very similar, as you can see. So the more that you understand isiZulu, which also happens to be the most widely spoken, so that's great for everyone who's trying to learn isiZulu. The more you'll understand isiZulu, the more you'll be able to comprehend all the other languages, because they're all similar. They all descend from the original Bantu. So that's where we're going to cut it for today. And I'm excited to continue this journey with you, learning isiZulu whilst learning about the history of this phenomenal nation. Thank you and goodbye.